What's up, everybody? This is the Hedge Mage, and I'm back again today for another Pauper video talking about another downshift from Ravnica Remastered. As always, if you want to support the channel, I would really appreciate it if you put a like on the video and subscribe. Also, if you want to stick around to the end, I will be going over another new brew based on the card we're talking about today. That card is Slitherhead. Now, this card costs a black or a green. It is a plant zombie, and it has a activated ability called Scavenge. And now this is 0 mana ability for its scavenge costs. Various other cards that have scavenge as an active ability, they'll have a different cost. This one costs 0 mana. So essentially what you're going to do when you activated scavenge ability is you're going to pay the cost, exile this card from your graveyard, and put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to this card's power on target creature. Scavenge only as a sorcery. So this is a 1/1. So essentially for 0 mana, if it's in your graveyard, during one of your main phases, you'll be able to put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, which isn't, like, it's not super powerful, but it's also not horrible. So it's definitely, you can put a +1/+1 counter on something. It could, if you were doing some kind of persist combo, you could probably, you know, if someone tried to stop you by like killing your creature before you could combo off, you could essentially negate the -1/-1 counter and keep that ball rolling. I don't think that's where you're going to play this card though. However, I don't think this card is making it in the one deck in the meta that does play persist combo, which is Mogwarts. Probably not getting played there. This card does seem playable. I think it should have a home somewhere. My first thought about where to put it, like where it could actually be beneficial, is in some type of tortured existence list, which there seems to be a bit of variety on those lists, as it's kind of fallen off the meta in a little bit. I would love to see Tortured Existence make a comeback. I'm a huge fan of those types of lists. This definitely could have a place there. Another bit of conversation I have heard about the card is that it could be a type of hardened scales list, which is basically +1/+1 counters matter, and a lot of things synergize with your creatures having +1/+1 counters on them having, trample. All creatures with +1/+1 counters have trample, that sort of thing, which would be probably a black-green aggro type of list. I haven't really come across any lists of that kind. I haven't really looked since this card became legal in the format, but they haven't really been very present outside of maybe someone making their own homebrew in that regard. It's definitely, I think, a pretty interesting card. Has a lot of utility with the +1/+1 counter. Will it see play? That kind of remains to be seen. All right, and for the deck today, trying to make the most out of Slitherhead. We got a Tordex build, or Tortured Existence. So this is where I think the card is going to be the best. So I've kind of come up with a brew that it's definitely more of a homebrew revolving around Tortured Existence, and is kind of trying to synergize with that the most. So let's go over what we got going on here. So we got 4 copies of our card Slitherhead. We got 4 copies of Spore Frog, 1 Fleshbag Marauder, 4 copies of Golgari Brownscale, 4 copies of Kitchen Imp, 1 copy of Thorn of the Black Rose, 1 Avenging Hunter, 1 Battlefield Scrounger, and 3 copies of Gurmag Angler. For here in our instant pile, got 1 copy of Ghastly Demise, 4 Seed of Hope, 4 copies of Cast Down, 3 Reckoner's Bargain, and 1 copy of Unexpected Fangs in the main board. And then everything else is just 4 copies of Tortured Existence. And then over here in our mana base, I got 2 Bojuka Bogs, 3 Forests, 3 Golgari Rot Farms, 4 Jungle Hollows, 1 Mortuary Mire, and 7 Swamps. In the sideboard, we're running 4 copies of Caustic Caterpillar, 3 copies of Nihil's Spellbomb, 4 copies of Chainer's Edict, 3 Unexpected Fangs, and 1 copy of Drown in Sorrow. So essentially what we are with this deck is we are a mid-range list trying to stall out our opponent until we can basically take advantage of the board. So that is kind of what we want to have. We want to have like some interaction as well as some as ways to sort of build up our own board state. Uh, so thinking about the various matchups and our card choices here in the sideboard, we have Caustic Caterpillar. And this card is great. It's really good against Affinity or Boggles, all the glitters, those types of decks. Essentially, we can get rid of their key enchantments or their key artifacts, can blow up some of their lands if they are Affinity, and it's also something that we can recur with Tortured Existence. So as long as we have like a card that we want to discard in our hand, either like a Kitchen Imp or even or one of our dredge creature, our Golgari Brown Scale, we can just keep getting Caustic Caterpillar back and keep blowing up the things that scare us. Nihil Spellbomb, obviously against Tolarian Terror, could also be used against any deck that is running stuff out of their graveyard. Also 4 copies of Chainer's Edict, trying to get around Boggles, basically. 3 copies of Unexpected Fangs. This is going to be really pivotal against any type of burn matchup or really heavy aggro white weenie, essentially, because we do have some bigger creatures here, so they can get pretty big and gain us a lot of life with this card. Drown in Sorrow against any aggro match, mostly against Boggles. Essentially against Boggles, you're bringing in 4 Chainer's Edicts and the 1 copy of Drown in Sorrow, and probably your Caustic Caterpillars as well. So looking at the creatures here, so what we want to recur a lot of is Spore Frog, and then there's a bunch of other cards in here that have a lot of utility. Fleshbag Marauder being one of them, as that's basically a removal spell we can play over and over again. Avenging Hunter, if we're in a long game and we just want to get an emblem and kind of steamroll our opponents. Battlefield Scrounger essentially lets us not to deck ourselves, since we will be milling ourselves a bit with cards like Golgari Brownscale and Seed of Hope. So we don't want to deck ourselves, especially in a longer game. Gurmag Angler is just a really big, efficient creature for us, since we do tend to fill up our graveyard. So playing a 1 mana 5/5 is pretty great. And then putting Unexpected Fangs on it is also pretty awesome. And we can either get Slitherhead in the graveyard by just blocking, milling it, or by declaring it as a blocker and then playing something like Reckoner's Bargain. We'll gain a life, and that's pretty decent. We definitely want to stay alive in this deck, so we are trying to get as much things that gain us life. We get that with Seed of Hope, we get that with Golgari Brown Scale, and we have 4 copies of Gain Lands as well in the deck, so hopefully that will be enough to stay alive, and that is kind of the main purpose until we get things going. In terms of what you want to put the +1/+1 counter on with Slitherhead, I think the best choice for that is going to be Kitchen Imp. So this is something where we can get back whatever card we want from our graveyard by discarding it with Tortured Existence. Then we also get to play it. So we discard this to get a creature back, and then we play the creature. Maybe we put we scavenge Slitherhead, and now it's a 3/3 flying haste. That's pretty decent. So that's kind of how we want to use Slitherhead for the most part. Could also be used by putting another counter on Gurmag Angler, so it can block a Tolarian Terror. Basically, with the Unexpected Fangs, it is now a 7/7, so could block their Tolarian Terror, which we don't have great ways to get rid of that outside of, maybe Ghastly Demise and our cast downs. You could also run Snuff Out instead of cast down. I was trying to keep the cost on this deck down just a little bit, so it's why I decided to go with cast downs instead. Stuff Out is also a great option. It's a free spell. It's a really good card. Uh, but yeah, so this is essentially the deck. Essentially, you just want to be mid range, control, and kind of hopefully end up on top by just stalling our opponents until we can get really set up. And so, yeah, I would love to hear what you guys think about Slitherhead. Do you think it's a card worthy to be played in the format? If so, let me know in the comment section below. And also, if you completely disagree with what I had to say in my analysis of this card, I would love to hear your thoughts about that. And I thank you everyone for sticking around to the end. As always, there's a link to the deck in the description. I hope everyone's having a wonderful day, and I will see you all next time.